Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that your salary just increased by $1,000 a month. Most people would be excited, and they should be. An extra $1,000 a month sounds like the kind of thing that could change your life. But here's something strange. For a lot of people, it wouldn't, at least not for very long. A few months go by, life adjusts, the excitement fades, and somehow that extra money just becomes part of the background. Nothing feels dramatically different. The stress is still there, the bills are still there. And that's when you start to realize something. Maybe the rat race isn't a place, maybe it's a cycle where working harder never seems to create enough room to breathe, a cycle where the finish line keeps moving every time you get closer to it. And if that's true, then the question isn't how to make more money. The question is what keeps pulling you back into the race every time you try to get ahead. Because for most people, the answer isn't their job, and it isn't their salary. It's a handful of spending habits that seem completely normal, but quietly keep people running in circles year after year. And today we're going to expose them. For a long time, most people believed something that seems completely logical. If you earn more money, life should become easier. More income should mean less stress, more freedom, more security, and eventually more happiness. But decades ago, an economist named Richard Easterlin noticed something strange. As people's incomes increased across society, they didn't necessarily become happier or feel more financially satisfied. This observation became known as the Easterlin paradox. The idea is surprisingly simple. Beyond a certain point, earning more money doesn't automatically create a better financial life, because what matters isn't just how much money comes in. What really matters is what you do with that money. And that's exactly where a lot of people get stuck. They spend years trying to solve a spending problem with an income solution. They assume the answer is always a bigger paycheck, a better job. And while earning more money can absolutely help, it often doesn't solve the deeper problem. Because if your spending habits stay the same, a higher income can simply create a bigger lifestyle. And a bigger lifestyle usually creates bigger financial obligations, which means the feeling of being stuck never truly goes away. The rat race just becomes more expensive. That's why this video isn't really about how much money you make. It's about what your spending habits are doing to the money you already earn. Today, we're going to break down 3 spending habits that quietly keep millions of people trapped in the rat race. And I'll also show you a few practical ways to start breaking that cycle without turning your life upside down. And if you enjoy understanding how money really works beneath the surface, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Because some of the biggest financial mistakes don't even look like mistakes. And the first one is probably far more common than most people realize. The first spending habit that keeps people stuck in the rat race is surprisingly difficult to spot because almost nobody believes they're doing it. After all, nobody walks into a dealership saying, "I'm here to buy status." Nobody walks into a clothing store saying, "I'm here to impress people." That's not how it feels. Instead, the conversation usually sounds very different. "I deserve this. I work hard. It's higher quality. It's an investment. It's only a little more expensive." And sometimes those things are true. The problem is that status rarely shows up wearing a name tag. It usually disguises itself as a reasonable decision. Think about how often this happens. A car that's a little nicer than what you actually need. A new phone that wasn't really necessary. Clothes that cost significantly more without adding much practical value. Individually, none of these decisions seem dramatic, and that's exactly what makes them dangerous. Because the goal isn't to buy one expensive thing, the goal is to maintain an identity, and maintaining an identity is much more expensive than buying a product. The purchase ends, the lifestyle doesn't. Now the nicer car becomes the standard, the premium phone becomes the standard, the more expensive habits become the standard. And once something becomes your standard, it's very difficult to move backwards. That's why status is one of the most expensive things people ever buy. Not because of the initial purchase, but because of everything that comes after it. And the really interesting part is that most people don't even realize they're paying for it. They believe they're buying convenience, quality, comfort, success, when many times they're actually buying a financial obligation that quietly follows them for years. But as expensive as this habit can be, it still isn't the one causing the most damage, because the next habit has a way of multiplying every financial mistake that came before it. The second spending habit is even more dangerous because it doesn't look like a single decision. It looks like progress, and that's exactly why so many people fall into this trap. This is the trap of constant upgrades. Most people don't wake up one day and dramatically change their lifestyle. The change happens gradually. A slightly better apartment, a new gym membership, a few extra subscriptions. Individually, none of these upgrades seem like a big deal. In fact, most of them seem completely reasonable. And that's exactly what quietly makes everything so much harder without you even noticing. Because the problem isn't any single upgrade. The problem is when all of them happen at the same time. Imagine someone gets a $500 monthly raise. At first, that sounds great. An extra $500 every month should create meaningful financial progress. But if you decide to move into a nicer apartment, you'll probably end up paying at least $100 more in rent. The car payment goes up, another $80, a phone plan upgrade, another $60, a few new subscriptions get added, another $40. Just like that, $218 of the raise has already disappeared. And that's before all the other small spending adjustments that usually come along with it. More delivery, a few extra nights out, a few purchases that suddenly feel affordable. Before long, the entire raise is gone. And the strange part is that the person often feels exactly the same financially. They're earning more, but they don't feel wealthier, they don't feel freer, and they don't feel significantly closer to their goals because the additional income never had a chance to create progress. It was immediately absorbed by a bigger lifestyle. This is one of the reasons so many people feel like they're running faster without getting anywhere. Every increase in income creates a matching increase in expenses, and eventually the cycle becomes automatic, which raises an important question. Why do so many people instinctively turn every income increase into new spending the moment it arrives? There's a reason for that, and I'm about to explain what it is. Because people see a raise as a reward, and rewards tend to be used, not protected, not invested, not preserved, used. And that's exactly what makes this habit so powerful, because it fuels all the others we've talked about so far. Think about what happens when someone gets a $300 monthly raise. At that moment, the situation seems simple. Their income increases by $300. But not long afterward, their expenses increase by $300 as well. The result? They're making more money, but their financial position has barely changed. Now, fast forward 2 years, that raise represents about $7,200 in additional income earned during that period. That sounds like a significant amount of money, and it is. But if every extra dollar was absorbed by new expenses, the end result can be surprisingly small. Income increased, but the financial margin and the overall feeling about money remain pretty much the same. This is one of the reasons so many people feel confused when they look at their own lives. They know they're earning more than they were a few years ago, but they can't understand why they don't feel further ahead financially. The money came in, but it never had the opportunity to change their trajectory because every raise was immediately turned into a new financial commitment, and then another, and then another. Over time, this creates a strange situation. Income keeps rising, but financial freedom stays almost exactly where it was. And there's an even deeper cost hidden behind all of this, a cost that most people never see because it doesn't show up in their bank account. And that brings us to what may be the most expensive spending habit of all. I promised to show you 3 spending habits that keep you stuck in the rat race. And we've already covered them, but I'm going to give you this next one as a bonus, because this topic truly deserves your attention, and the more you understand it, the sooner you can break free from this cycle. All of the habits we've discussed so far lead to the same hidden problem. They make people focus on what they're getting instead of what they're giving up. This is what I call the invisible cost. Most people look at a purchase and see only the price tag. A TV costs $2,000. A vacation costs $3,000. A purchase costs whatever number appears on the screen. And that's where the calculation ends. But financially intelligent people tend to see a second price that most people completely ignore. They see what that money could have become if it had been given a different job. Let's use a simple example. Imagine someone buys a $2,000 TV. Most people see a $2,000 expense, nothing more. But now imagine that same $2,000 is placed into a high-yield savings account earning around 4.5% annually. Without adding another dollar, that money could grow to approximately $2,280 after 3 years. Now, $280 probably isn't going to change anyone's life, but that's not really the point. Because the TV didn't just cost $2,000. It also cost the extra $280. And that's where things start to look different. Every purchase has 2 prices: the money you spend today and the future growth that money will never have the opportunity to generate. But the invisible cost goes even deeper than that. Because it's not only about lost growth, it's also about lost opportunities. The ability to take advantage of an opportunity when it appears. The ability to make a decision without feeling financially trapped. And when you begin looking at money through that lens, something changes. You stop asking only what a purchase costs, and you start asking what it prevents. Because sometimes the most expensive purchases aren't the ones with the biggest price tags. They're the ones that quietly steal future opportunities without you ever noticing. So if these habits are keeping so many people stuck in the rat race, how do you actually break the cycle without spending your entire life counting pennies? Believe it or not, the answer is actually pretty simple. I'm going to show you 3 solutions that helped me, and I know they can help you too. The first practical solution is what I call the split raise system. The idea is simple. The next time your income increases, don't let the entire raise disappear into your lifestyle. divide that money before your lifestyle gets a chance to absorb it. For example, imagine you get a $500 monthly raise. Instead of treating that $500 as new spending money, you split it. 50% goes toward your future. That could be savings, investing, paying off debt, or building a stronger emergency fund. 30% goes toward improving your lifestyle, because yes, you should be able to enjoy part of your progress. And 20% goes toward fun, something you can enjoy without guilt. So with a $500 raise, $250 goes toward your future, $150 improves your lifestyle, and $100 is simply there to enjoy. That way you still feel the reward, but the reward doesn't swallow the entire raise. The second solution is the Freedom Account. This is a separate account with one job, to buy you options. Not some distant idea that feels 40 years away. Options. Maybe it gives you the ability to leave a job that's draining you. Maybe it gives you breathing room during a period of unemployment. Maybe it allows you to say yes to an opportunity that requires a little financial flexibility. Set up an automatic transfer of $200 or $300 a month. Treat it like a bill your future self sends you. If you transfer $300 a month into that account and it earns around 8% annually through a simple long-term investment, after 5 years it could grow to approximately $22,000. And again, the real value isn't just the number, it's what that number gives you. The third solution is the upgrade limit. This one is extremely practical. Never make more than one lifestyle upgrade at the same time. If you move into a better apartment, don't also upgrade your car. If you upgrade your car, don't also add 3 new subscriptions. If you increase your monthly expenses in one area, keep everything else stable for a while. This gives your income time to breathe, because the problem usually isn't one upgrade. The problem is stacking upgrades until your raise has nowhere left to go. These 3 systems work because they don't ask you to be perfect. They simply create guardrails. You can still enjoy your money, and you can still buy things that matter to you. But now your spending has limits, your raises have a plan, and your future gets paid before your lifestyle takes everything. And once that starts happening, the rat race begins to lose some of its power. And that's the main goal of this video, to help people see the reasons they're staying stuck in the rat race for much longer than they ever imagined. Because most people believe the problem is income. They believe the solution is always earning more, a promotion, a better opportunity. And while those things can certainly help, they are not the deciding factor. Because money doesn't automatically improve a financial life. Money simply amplifies the habits that already exist. That's why 2 people can receive the exact same raise and end up in completely different places a few years later. One person's financial flexibility grows, the other person's expenses grow. One person's options expand, the other person's obligations expand. And neither of them notices it happening in real time, because the habits that keep people stuck rarely seem dangerous. They seem normal, and that's exactly what makes them so powerful. Nobody plans to spend all of their future raises before they even receive them. And nobody intentionally builds a lifestyle that requires every dollar they earn. These patterns develop slowly, one decision at a time. And eventually, what began as a series of small choices turns into a financial reality that feels impossible to escape. That's why the real lesson of this video is not to avoid every purchase, and it's definitely not to feel guilty every time you spend money. The goal is awareness. Because when you can see these patterns clearly, they lose much of their power over you. You begin to recognize the difference between spending that builds a better future and spending that quietly steals from it. While some people use raises to expand their lifestyle, others use raises to expand their freedom. While some people buy status, others buy options. And over time, those differences create completely different outcomes. Not because one group is smarter, but because they understand something that many people overlook. Every dollar has a job. And the jobs you give your money today ultimately determine the life that money will create for you tomorrow. The truth is that the rat race isn't really a race against other people, against your coworkers, or even against your income. The real problem with the rat race is that most people never stop long enough to ask themselves where they're actually running. Because when every raise immediately turns into a new expense, every upgrade turns into a new obligation, and every purchase turns into a new standard, the finish line keeps moving. No matter how fast you run, it never feels like you've arrived. And that's why so many people spend years working harder, earning more, and still feeling financially stuck. Not because they're doing everything wrong, but because without realizing it, they keep feeding a cycle that never allows them to get ahead. The people who eventually escape aren't always the ones who earn the most. More often, they're the ones who realize they don't need to run faster. They simply need to stop feeding the habits that keep the cycle alive. That's why I genuinely encourage you to put the ideas we talked about today into practice. Try the split raise system. Create your Freedom Account. Use the upgrade limit. You don't have to change your entire life overnight. You just need to start creating a little more space between your income and your lifestyle. because that's exactly where financial freedom begins. $1 at a time. If you've watched this video all the way to this point, I want you to be honest with me. Do you feel stuck in the rat race? And if the answer is yes, what habits are still keeping you there? Leave a comment below. I always enjoy reading what you have to say.